Megan Zimmerman is the Outreach Program Director at NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Fox Valley, where she directs all community and school outreach in the Fox Valley area. With 8 years of experience working in the nonprofit mental health sector, Megan has delivered hundreds of presentations on mental health in the Fox Valley area. She is particularly passionate about coordinating crisis intervention trainings for local law enforcement and their partnering agencies in working with the Fox Valley Suicide Prevention Action Team to reduce suicide attempts and deaths in the Tri-County area. Megan holds a Bachelor of Science in Community Health Education from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. Outside of her professional work, Megan enjoys reading, baking, and spending time with her family on the bay in Little Swamico. Megan?
All right. Thank you. I hope you don't mind. I'm kind of a walker. And I was also presenting to a bunch of fourth graders this morning, so they make me antsy. So, well, thank you for the lovely introduction. And I'll do a quick introduction to myself and to NAMI before we kind of delve into the content as well. I was really excited to be approached with this opportunity because prior to my role at NAMI, which it feels like I've been at NAMI forever, it's just been home for so long, but I actually worked for the AIDS Resource Center of Wisconsin, which is now Vivint Health, and have some connections from there in the room as well. And so, you know, they were telling me like, these are the people that are going to be in the audience, and you know, this is what they're looking for, you know, guidance on. And I was like, oh yeah, I get it. I know exactly what you're talking about because I used to work with you guys. And so hopefully that knowledge and that experience can help me relate a little bit more on a deeper level. And I certainly had that in mind as I was creating the content for this presentation as well. So good. How many people are familiar with the organization NAMI? Excellent. Yeah, I kind of figured. There are some audiences you go to, though, and you get very little hands raised, but I think we have fairly good name recognition in our state in particular. And so NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, we have over 600 offices across the United States. There are 23 offices in the state of Wisconsin, and NAMI Fox Valley is the local affiliate that I work for. We cover all of Outagamie, Calumet, Wapaka, and northern Winnebago County, Neenah, Menasha. And then we rely on 22 other offices to cover the rest of the state. We all operate very independently. We all have our own mission and vision. We all have our own funding sources. And we all have kind of our own capacity to carry out the programs that we do. NAMI Fox Valley, we are so fortunate to have a very strong community backing. We have very strong community support, and that allows us to be one of the most robust NAMIs in the nation. But depending on where you're going in the state, your NAMI may not be as robust as ours. And so I just encourage you, you know, if you're ever looking for mental health support programs, mental health education programs, connecting with a peer, you know, someone that has a diagnosis or a loved one that does, check into your affiliate that's closest to you and see what they have to offer. A silver lining of COVID, however, is that many of us are still operating hybrid or virtual only groups and education classes. So let's say maybe the affiliate that is closest to you doesn't have a lot going on. Check out something else in the state and see if we can kind of break down that barrier and have them attend a virtual support group or education class. We operate multiple a year. So check into that as well. All right. Oh, I got a clicker. Here we go. So this is what we're going to talk about today. I always like to know what I'm getting myself into when I commit to sitting here for a significant amount of time. So we're going to talk about effective de-escalation strategies to reduce caller distress. It is my understanding that the majority of your interactions with individuals are over the phone. Yes? Okay, perfect. We're going to talk a little bit about active listening, although I'm sure that's maybe been drilled in you a little bit, but we'll touch on some of the extra important ones that we talk about at NAMI in relation to answering support calls. So that would be paraphrasing, reflecting emotions, and asking clarifying questions for understanding. We're going to talk about, validating phrases that we can use to really acknowledge a person's true emotion that they're feeling, and also hopefully reduce their stress about, the reason why you're calling. And then lastly, identify some mental health support resources in case that would ever come up where you would have the opportunity to lend a resource to that individual if they're, having a particularly hard time kind of digesting the information that you've given them. So with that, how do you know when you have a caller on the other line that is having a really emotional response? How do you pick up on that? Or how do you know that that's happening? Yeah.
Maybe short sentences, trying to get their breath, or maybe scattered thoughts.
Yeah, so crying, talking in short sentences, trying to catch their breath. Perhaps they kind of have scatterbrain, they can't get their thoughts together. Yeah, absolutely. Others? Or maybe they just say it. Yeah, like, I'm feeling really emotional about this. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Yeah, how fast they talk. And typically, when we are more uncomfortable, we tend to speed it up. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah, I kind of wondered if that was happening. I didn't want to assume, but yeah, some profanities, some yelling. Yeah, you're kind of the bearer of bad news, right? And even though it's not your fault, you're hearing the earful of it. Yeah, good. Yeah, you might not know. Yeah. Yeah, they could be just, seemingly very calm, taking it all in, kind of giving you short answers to the questions that you're asking, or, giving you the information that you need. And, um, perhaps after that is when they really do the breakdown. Yeah. Oh, that's a really good point. We might not know. I imagine too, like silence might, in response to the questions that you're asking. Again, they could be trying to compose themselves, giving themselves extra time to kind of take in those emotions. Perfect. So let me tell you on a very like chemical and biological level what happens when we're really emotionally charged in our brain. So our brain develops from the bottom to the top in the front, right? So it starts with this brain stem that really helps us, in that like survival type mode. That develops very early on. In fact, 90% of our brain develops by the time we are 5 years old. And then the rest of it takes a really long time. That really long time for development part of our brain is that pink piece. And that is the piece where we are thinking rationally. We're problem solving. We are, able to reason. Now, perhaps a lot of the individuals that you're working with, that part of their brain might not even be fully developed yet. And also, when they are very emotionally charged, they are actually like biologically not able to access that part of their brain. They are sticking in that limbic system, and that is where we process emotions. Specifically, a piece of the brain that's called the amygdala, and that's kind of our emotion control center. We tend to stay there, which reduces, if not totally eliminates, our capacity to do all of those really higher level thinking things. And a lot of the time, you all, when you're calling, you're expecting them to use that part of their brain to answer the questions that you're asking. So first and foremost, if a person is emotionally charged, we want to try to de-escalate them so that they have the best ability to really access that most developed part of their brain. So let's talk about how we do that. First off, you got to stay calm yourself. I think when people have an emotional response, in particular, someone who is yelling, raising their voice, appears angry, which often is a blanket emotion for fear, or they're really sad about the information that you're delivering. All they want you to do is get charged with them. And when you don't, it's kind of defeating to them. Like at some point, they're just not going to do it anymore because what's the point? And we teach this to all of our law enforcement officers as well. They want you to get to their level. That's the whole point of getting, emotionally charged. But as, often as you can, remain calm. I mean, you might be a little overwhelmed on the inside, perhaps, or taken aback, but appearing that way to the caller would be important. Let that person vent it out. I don't know if you are supposed to have, a certain amount of time allotted for these calls, but I can tell you that any support call that I look back on and think, gosh, that went really well, was probably over 15 minutes. I mean, it takes a significant amount of time. And knowing that ahead of time as you prepare to call someone, especially if, you may have an idea that they may be really, overwhelmed by the information, giving yourself enough time to have these calls is important. So letting that person talk, vent. I always say the best part about supporting someone is that they do most of the work. And it's our job to really kind of listen and recap what they are telling us and then offer what we can offer. Deal with those emotions first. So, after they get through that whole venting part of it, name the emotion that you are feeling from them so that they understand that you understand where they're at emotionally. Kind of a quintessential phrase that comes to mind that I use on a lot of these conversations is, gosh, it sounds like you're really frustrated. And then oftentimes I'll try to empathize and say, if I just got that information too, I'd probably be really overwhelmed as well, trying to make it real, trying to make them feel like it's okay that they're feeling that way. A lot of the times, though, when someone else is emotionally charged at us, or if, it feels like we're the victim of that, it can be hard to calm ourselves down in that manner. And so some things that have kind of helped me or coworkers along the way, I usually have a fidget at hand, always. A good one is, have you seen these like ring coils? Yeah, it's called tactical sensory de-escalation. And so yeah, they're these little coil rings that you can just kind of like move up and down your finger. Those are really nice. They're quiet. That's kind of the key that you want here, right? You don't want the caller to hear like the clicking of the fidget. They make some fancy fidgets these days. Or the spinning of the fidget, things like that. So yeah, anything really quiet can be helpful. Uh, Emotional support water bottles, that's what we call them in our office. But sometimes just taking a drink, having that temperature change. I know like room temperature water seems to be all the rage right now, but the colder the water, the better in terms of trying to like shock yourself back into like a state of feeling like you're calm. And so I always try to do like cold water. Um, Progressive muscle relaxation is something that you can practice over the phone as well. So this would be just tensing up different muscle groups and then releasing them and doing so mindfully. It's a very good grounding technique that you can do while still being very present with a person on the phone. Also, breathe, intentionally breathe. You maybe don't want to be like right in the phone because then they might sense like, oh gosh, this person needs to be de-escalated as well. But taking those breaths. I have a lot of coworkers too who always just have like a doodle pad to kind of, just draw it out or color as they're taking in this call as well. So some validating statements that you could say. So we never want to minimize or diminish a person's experience. Even if we know it's not the end of the world, say for someone to have an exposure to chlamydia because the treatment is really easy, and, but to them it might seem like the end of the world. To them that might have meant that a partner cheated on them or something along those lines. And so we never want to diminish or make judgments or assume that we know exactly how they're feeling. And so, we want to stay away from things like, oh gosh, just let it go, or you're going to get over it. It'll be fine. Gosh, but other people have it way worse. We just never want to say um, those type of phrases. Not that I would assume that any of you are saying those things anyways, but some really validating statements that could be helpful to someone is, I'm here to support you. I'm here to listen to you. What can I do to help you? I think sometimes, in our field, we assume we know how best to help someone. But sometimes when we ask them how they think we can help them the best, outside of us telling them the things that we need to tell them, that can be really helpful. If you need to talk more, you can. I'm here. I've said that before. And then again, just naming those emotions that must have been really difficult, or that sounds like it's really difficult. If I had that going on, I think I would feel those same things that you're feeling. We also don't want to over empathize with people, right? Gosh, I know exactly what you're going through. No one really likes to hear that either, because everyone's situation is different. So not over empathizing as well. Some other things. So focus on what you can do to help support them. I think sometimes we get wrapped up in, like trying to be the person that fixes everything that is coming about. But you play your role in this scenario. And then there are other people that can tap in to help support that person. So, yes, you're there to vent, to listen to them vent. You're there to validate. But at the end of the day, if they need more than what you're giving them as, a public health nurse or a disease interventionist, or, insert your job title, it's okay to say, I really think you would benefit from maybe utilizing a resource like 988 and talking to someone that really, can understand those emotions that you're going through. When you're having these conversations and someone is, obviously really escalated, we want to make sure that the speech that we're using is slow and clear. So kind of like you mentioned, when we get escalated and nervous, our speech starts to pick up. And they will pick up on that as well. And so, as calmly and slowly and clearly as possible, give them time to process the information that you're giving them and also to respond to the information or the questions that you're asking. And I know that you call and you ask a lot of questions. And so make sure you're giving them that appropriate amount of time to answer. Also, you don't know what other things they may have going on, right? They could have just had like the worst week of their entire life. And now it's like, oh, great. Now you're the straw that broke the camel's back by giving them this call. And uh, they may need time to really process and ask those, answer those questions. Um, is it, I guess I'm just asking from a curiosity standpoint, if you feel like a person isn't ready to have that conversation with you that day or that moment, say, is it okay to say, is there a better time I can reach out? Yeah, so I think really giving people that grace as well is helpful. Um, Something we really talk about at NAMI too is, you know, sometimes you may be in a really like emotionally heightened state, or perhaps you're having like a really strong emotional response to this person. Um, I always think it is better to take a beat and call this person back than to perhaps not give that person your best self. Uh, we truly believe at NAMI that like if we aren't in a good place with our mental health, we can actually be a danger to other people when we're trying to provide support and resources. And so just really staying in tune with how you're feeling and handling the information is important as well. Practice patience, right? Offer reassurance as well. Oh, I don't know if this is going to work. Are we hooked up to the internet? Okay. I know my usually like a big play button comes on here. But let me just see if it's gonna work. It's okay if it doesn't. The link. Um, I feel like that might get tricky then for the people online. And so to avoid any potential technical difficulties, write down the name of this video if you have never seen it. It's pretty widely spread in our field, in the mental health field, but it really just emphasizes the point that it is not our job to fix someone. We might think we know the problem, which in this case is the nail in this lady's forehead. But a lot of the times what people are looking for from us for support is just to validate and listen, and not immediately jump to the fix of everything. Did you have a question? That's what that is. Yeah, the title of it, you bet. Yep. Yeah, it is a good one. Okay. So some active listening things, which again might just be review, but I do give some examples of things that I have actually said on the phone to someone that might be helpful. Maybe I always feel like you can always add a couple tools to the toolbox. And so active listening does not mean hearing, which is just like processing sounds. Active listening actually requires a lot of your energy, even though the active listening is kind of deemed easy to people. The goal is to truly gain an understanding of the other person's perspective when we are actively listening. So that is the purpose. So be ready to fully listen, eliminate those distractions. Don't call a person when you know you have to be on a Zoom meeting in 10 minutes. And so you already have a deadline that you're trying to meet. I think that, people can sense that when you're trying to like wrap it up. I know I can. So be fully prepared to listen, to offer that support, demonstrate that you're listening. And this is somewhat difficult over the phone, but I think demonstrating that you're listening, I have actually told people, I'm ready to listen. It's your turn, you go. Um, but you can also do that through the different techniques that we'll talk about here in just a second. Ask appropriate questions, open-ended, help you better understand and truly gain a better understanding of that person's perspective. Close-ended, they're okay to ask. They help finalize kind of that understanding of what's at hand. Restating and rephrasing in your own words. We're going to talk about paraphrasing here in just a second. And then summarizing next steps, what you need them to do, what you want them to do as well. Because again, you may have told them what you need them to do or what you're expecting of them, and then they go into this big long vent session and they might have just gone in one ear and out the other. So let's focus in first on paraphrasing. So essentially, hey, cows. I went to school with Chelsea. We worked at ARCW together, and she loves cows. So, and I didn't even know she was going to be here. How fitting. Restating the same information using different words to concisely reflect what the person said. So, it's phrases that I have said to people before. I would say my go-to is, it sounds like what you're telling me is rephrase, paraphrase what they just told you. What I'm hearing you say is, if I'm hearing you correctly, that's really going to make sure that your caller and you are on the same page, which is really important. Next one, reflecting emotions. So this is essentially relaying what was said back to you or back to that person, to show that you truly understand how they feel. And this has everything to do, again, with like naming that emotion, validating that emotion. I get the sense that you might be feeling afraid about what might happen if da da da. To me, it sounds like you're feeling anxious about this. It seems like you're feeling a bit confused about everything, which I totally understand. How can I best help you work through that? What information can I give you that might make it less confusing or less overwhelming? And lastly, those clarifying questions, right? Inviting that person to explain some aspect of what they said because maybe you didn't catch it. Maybe you just want to clarify your understanding of that. Can you say more about this just so that I have a better understanding? Let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. That's definitely something I've said before. I'm not quite sure I understood what you meant when you said this. Did you mean that, state your understanding of it and see if you're on the same page? Really, all three of those are trying to get on the same page of the information that you're giving each other and also the emotions that are driving the conversation. It's best not to interrupt. And that can be hard, especially when, caveat, if a person is being verbally abusive, it's okay. Well, maybe you should talk to your boss about that. From my standpoint, it's okay to interrupt that person and draw a compassionate boundary. I understand that you're feeling really frustrated with the information that I'm telling you. However, I am not going to allow you to speak to me that way. My purpose is that I'm here to help you. And sometimes then even like an invitation to take a beat and maybe call them back at a later time as well. We deal with a lot of that at NAMI for sure on our support calls. Best not to use triggering words or phrases. I'm going to show you some examples of those here on the next slide. Best not to fire questions or information at them. Again, that can be really overwhelming. Best not to correct them, to criticize them, to judge them as well. So some examples of triggering words and phrases. The word but is a big one. talk about that a lot in the work that we do. And it's a hard shift to make. I find myself trying to eliminate that word out of my vocabulary a lot, especially when I'm trying to like de-escalate my young children. And it is hard. It takes like a conscious effort, but the word but oftentimes leads to information that they don't really want to hear. And so by just saying that word, they might already like not be listening to you. So try to replace but with and. And like it takes a lot of practice, to be completely honest. That one's not super easy. Avoid any statement that I would say is passing judgment. So, you should have done this. Well, I understand why you da da da. The only thing we can do is, well, that doesn't sound super hopeful, right? Okay, so there's only one option? No. Something I always say is, well, one of the best options is this. And at NAMI, we really draw on a lot of our personal experience to try to help callers too. So, it could sound like the best option. One of the best options in your situation is this, and that worked for me, or I know that that's worked for a bunch of people that I've worked with or talked to. We can't do that. Okay, let's try to focus on, again, what we can do. Well, what we can do is, at this point, you're going to have to, again, that's kind of, I think the idea behind some of these is that you're kind of like in control and perhaps like talking from a more like authoritative state rather than like someone who's on their team trying to work with them and support them. And that last one too, the empathizing stuff too. I know how you feel. Well, I can understand how you would feel that way. I think it's really important that after you have a hard interaction with someone, whether that be in person, over the phone, that you take time to recharge. Now, how many of you are primarily working from home, not like most of the time? Okay. Are the rest of you working in an office where you have access to your coworkers fairly regularly? Okay, great. So I know that after a hard support call, the first thing I do is take a breath to try to reset myself. And then after that, pretty immediately, I will go debrief with someone. If I'm working from home, I can pick up the phone and call one of my coworkers. Or, we've gotten pretty savvy recently, throw it in a Teams chat, throw it in a Google chat. That can be, a good source of support too. But talk it through. If you just sit there and think, gosh, that call went awful, and then you just pick up the phone and dial another person's number, that is potentially going to taint, the rest of your calls throughout that day. And so really just get it out there, vent about it. And I think, it's okay too to debrief with your trusted humans outside of work too. But you also don't want to like dump all of that on them. I try to be really cognizant of that. And my husband's a teacher, and so he kind of gets that too. We both have really rough days at work, and it kind of dampens the mood when like that's all we're doing is like debriefing and venting about everything that went wrong that day because we chose not to do that while we were working. Try not to take a lot of that home. Prepare for what's next, right? If you know you got to make 100 more phone calls, all right, prepare yourself take those deep breaths, get a drink of water. My excuse is always the printer is on the opposite side of my office. And so if I, need an excuse to get up, but maybe I don't necessarily want to like strike up a long conversation with someone in the office, I'll, at least get those steps in to go pick something up off the printer, things like that. And those little elements of self-care that you can do as well. I think when we have the luxury of working from home, we have access to potentially more self-care things that we can do. But some good ones that you can do in the workplace, take a short walk. It can be around the office, but even better if it's outside. Put on some music, even if just for a second. Eat a healthy snack, do a quick stretch, any of that will be helpful in kind of recharging and allowing you to hopefully, have a blank, clean slate for that next interaction. Are there any other kind of like little things that have helped you all recharge after a hard conversation that perhaps aren't on here that you could share your wisdom with the group? Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, pet therapy, you bet. Like, call the cat over, call the dog over. Absolutely. Our old office manager used to have a little dog that she brought to work every day. That was kind of like her stipulation of staying as long as she did. Well, you got to let me bring the dog. And I don't think like anyone realized how much we missed having that dog, even though I don't know that the dog was all that. I don't know. She was fine. But I think, some people needed that little break to just like peek over and see her little tail wagging when she comes up to, the gate that was blocking her in that person's office. And yeah, pet therapy, that's great. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. So kind of, setting a time, a set amount of time at the end of the day to just be like, all right, this is what I did today. Or even like the drive home to kind of like then when you enter into your home to just kind of like leave it. Yeah, that's so important in having that like work-life harmony is not bringing all of that stuff home and drawing those boundaries. Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. So accomplishing a different task, perhaps even unrelated to the work at hand, whether that be throwing a load of laundry if you have the luxury to do that, um, or even like, working on something else quick before you make that next call to feel like, oh, I actually did accomplish something today. Yeah, absolutely. We need that. When we feel a sense of accomplishment, our brain actually releases endorphins in our body. And I actually learned this in a really cool training. So they talked about giving people, are we familiar with warheads? Yeah, I know my mouth salivates just thinking about them. Um, but it makes all the sense. So essentially, they'd have, people that were very escalated out in the field. And what they said is, as long as they weren't concerned about that individual choking, they would offer them a warhead. And what that does is it's sour, intensely sour, but only for about 15 seconds. And then you get to like the good, sweet part. And actually, what happens is your brain releases endorphins because it's like I did something. I made that sour taste go away, and now I actually enjoy this piece of candy. And that can like trigger someone to, kind of get out of that intense emotional state and back into a place of calm. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They also gave us, oh gosh, what were those called? High chews. Yeah, so like really chewy, um, really chewy candy, right? Like even I would say like not even as easy to eat as like a piece of taffy. And that sense of like accomplishment after you're like, all right, I like my jaw is physically sore, but like I did it, I ate that piece of candy. Um, Again, like a little endorphin boost. So maybe you need to keep some warheads and some high chews present next to your next to your phone. Anything else? Anyone wants to share? Yes, a scheduled office cry session. Yes. We had a college professor who called these BMW sessions, and it stood for the B word, moaning, and whining. So we had 15 minutes to BMW before class until we like got down to business because some people just need to do that, right? Yeah, absolutely. Or have a little office cry session about, gosh, I feel like that call just went awfully. Let me cry about it and let's move on. Good. All right, let's talk through some resources. So these resources would be specific to someone who might need some more emotional support than what you should have to give them in your, short interaction with them. So 988. Great resource. It's operated differently all across the state, to be completely honest, depending on what call center is answering the calls. But in our state, um, they all go to an office in Green Bay, and our state does a good job of answering the majority of the calls that come through. Our response rate is much higher than other states. You can also text 988 and you can chat 988, so 988lifeline.org. It's a free 24/7 service. And we highly provide this as a resource to all of our callers as well. The Trevor Project. So 988 used to be able to directly connect to the Trevor Project, and now they no longer have the ability to do that. And so if that individual communicates that they are a member of the LGBTQ plus community, perhaps that's a resource that you can give them. It's essentially, offering free, confidential, emotional support for people. And they too have the call option, the chat option, and the text option. There's also the Hope Line. I would say we tend to see this utilized a little bit more in our younger population, middle, high school, but a great resource as well. You can text Hope Line 741-741 and get free text support and counseling. I think what's nicest about 988 is the training that they're offered in our state is quite extensive. Whereas I'm not sure that you get the same level of trained individuals on the Hope Line, but it is still a good resource. I'll also talk about some NAMI resources. So we have a NAMI helpline. So this would be, just anyone who wants to call, text, or email. Yeah, I'll just leave. You'll have the slides, right? So you don't have to like rapidly write all this stuff down. But just a really great resource as well. Again, I probably even failed to mention this, which is a disservice on my part. But I think what makes talking to people at NAMI unique is that we all identify as a person who lives with a mental illness or that has like a very close loved one that does. And so we've had to navigate either within ourselves or with a close loved one, a lot of the same, emotions that people navigate to. So, and then in my conversations with Adele, know that a large portion of the population that you work with are young adults. And so we also have a resource, a text number, and a call number specific to teens and young adults. Ours does not operate 24/7, unfortunately, but it is Monday through Friday, 9 to 9. It says 10 to 10, but we're not in the Eastern time zone. So 9 to 9. Which is hopefully fairly accessible, even though it's not a 24-hour service. And then you're going to get a young adult specialist that can maybe connect a little bit better with that individual. My contact information there, but I am happy to answer any and all questions that you might have. Yeah.
So it's like, especially with the text, the teen line.
Yeah.
All her texts outside of hours, and do they get responded to the next day?
For a text, yes. I don't know the answer to that for a call. Like if there's a voicemail service or if they just say like, the line is closed, call back later, or perhaps they're promoting a more 24/7 resource like 988. But I know that they can view the text log and we'll get back to them, when they can. But I'm actually unsure about the calling feature. I'll have to try that out. Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks. Yeah, sure.
Know what a 98 call looks like.
Oh,
I grew up in the 90s with Rescue 911.
yep. Yep. Yeah, let me tell you what a 988 call looks like. So when you call 988, there are a few different options that a operator will come on at first. So the couple different options that they're still able to direct you to is if you are a Spanish speaking individual, there's a Spanish line that you will be directed to. And then there is also still a connection to a veterans line. And then used to be one for the LGBTQ and now no longer is. And so that will be your first question. It'll ask you, press 1, press 0, whatever. And then it will kind of give you some options on like why you're calling and prompt you to press a number. So you'll figure out what number you press. A lot of the times I will just keep pressing 0 because eventually it'll get me to someone probably faster than listening to the prompter. So that's how I've always navigated that. If I'm like, no, I just need to speak to someone now, press 0. And then from there, someone will pick up, they will tell you their name, they will ask you for your name, and they'll say, kind of like, tell me the reason why you're reaching out today. And they'll vent it out, and then they'll provide whatever resources, support that they can offer. Their calls can be like over an hour long sometimes with a person. They're not getting paid on how many calls they make. They're there to really take each caller and give them what they need. They can directly communicate with 911 if the caller presents any sort of concern that they are in immediate danger to themselves or to someone else. So they do have that ability to like dispatch to 911. However, they don't always know, like, it's not caller ID, so they don't always know exactly who's calling. That person can remain, pretty anonymous. And that's, to encourage more people to reach out and not be afraid that they're going to call law enforcement. I just looked at the numbers for 988, and in Wisconsin, we are transferring less than 1% of our calls to 911. So really the counselors do a great job of de-escalating and providing people resources. outside of like letting law enforcement get involved? Yeah. Yeah, great question. Perfect. Online question. Any tips to help with rapid firing? With my ADHD and such, I feel like it's my default sometimes that I'm always working to improve on. Yeah, that one's hard. And I think I don't necessarily have any like tips to try to slow down unless anyone else has any tips. But I think it really is like a conscious effort. And I think, you know, in a presentation, I can sense when I am talking fast. And I feel like I catch myself and I have to like in my brain say, all right, Megan, slow it down. You got time. You don't need to be a motor mouth right now. So sometimes it's just having like that awareness within yourself to be like, okay, I'm talking fast. Let's redact. But I also think like give yourself some grace. Like if you have a diagnosable condition that has you rapid fire information, I mean, give yourself some grace. You can only do so much with what you got. And at the end of the day, it's not the end of the world to talk fast. Just know that you may have to be repeating yourself, which is okay. Yeah.
To that, Megan.
Yeah.
Said about any tips. What I've done even in my personal life, if I knew that someone was gonna call me that I need to kind of be ready for.
Yeah.
I would write a note to myself that would say, like, maybe be appreciative or something, but like in this case, you could just write slow down.
Yeah, that's
And then
great.
time.
Right? Yeah, maybe you have like a sticky note next to your phone that just says like, Megan, slow down. As like that physical like reminder, right, kind of like right there in your face. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Patients like, I don't have much time to get as much as you can for them to understand what's going on. And I know what I do is if I'm asking questions, I'll ask one question at a time, and after each question I go, does that make sense?
Yep.
Or do you understand that before I move on to the next thing?
Yeah.
I think I'm explaining something too, it doesn't have to be a question
Yep.
necessarily, but something that I do, I just feel.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. So, yeah, one strategy that was brought up in the room here is to you know, a lot of the times you're getting like, well, I don't have time for this. Like, can we make this quick? And so, yeah, if you are having to rapid fire information to, you know, ask the question, give the information, and then get a clarification of understanding, you know, say, does that make sense? Should we move on? Yeah, that's great.
You have coworkers.
Yeah.
And you know, you can just like, hey, can I just like listen to the way that you word things? 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, like the way that you said that,
Mm-hmm.
like simplified what, you know, what I say, what takes me longer.
Yeah.
So that is helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. So sitting in with someone who maybe has more experience or even just to get like a fresh take on, you know, how are other people doing the same thing I'm doing and trying to pick up little like tips, little phrases that could be some go-tos. Yeah, that's great. Any other questions, comments about anything? Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time. Don't be afraid to reach out too. You can utilize me as a resource. I'm happy to chat with you on the phone or shoot me an email, and I'm happy to respond if you need any support or have a question perhaps that maybe you didn't want to ask in front of the group. Happy to communicate with you. Thank you.